still can't understand this my stupid mercy in the fight, and that cost me this fight. So I would like to fight a rematch.
I know that's not a real fighter. No, that's just someone who's trying to play to the crowd and wants people to believe a narrative and trying to go with it. And when that word merciful was fed into his mouth on that night, after when he had said what he had said, he went with it and played with it, and that was his excuse so that he could hopefully get a rematch. There is no way he gets that rematch. I don't see him getting past Ankalaev. He gets his ass beat from Ankalaev.
A lot of people might think that he's making excuses. I don't know about making excuses, but he did make a mistake. When you're in there, you gotta fight until the final bell. You gotta fight until the referee drags you off, okay? You shouldn't care whether or not your opponent is compromised. If this is ancient Japan and you're battling with samurai swords, right, and you hesitate for 1 second, that katana is gonna take your head off. Now, I'm not criticizing Jiri Prochazka. I'm a huge fan of the guy and I'm very open about that. There's no criticism, but there was a mistake. Maybe he showed mercy, maybe he hesitated, but what he did was make a mistake that cost him the Light Heavyweight Championship. Congratulations to Jiri and his whole family, because he's got a baby on the way, and that's the important stuff in life. He's got another chapter, but he will be back because he did look dangerous. He did look like he could have taken Ulberg out of there in the first round, but that's the great thing about this sport. You zig when you should have zagged, you bob when you should have weaved, you hesitate when you should have unleashed, then you get flatline. Simple as that.
That was unbelievable. Hats off to Carlos Ulberg, man. Lesser fighters had quit in that position where they'd grabbed the leg, and he'd done the opposite, lad. He fucking kept going. Gotta feel bad for Jiri, lad. Is he ever gonna get another title shot now? That's the question. Is he ever gonna get another title shot? Because that's his third title fight loss. And if he would have just stayed a bit more patient, I think he would have definitely won that fight.
It was so impressive for him to stay composed. You've seen that knee buckling, and you've seen him just dealing with this adversity. He wasn't looking for like a way out. He was hands up, still staying sharp, and just knew that Jiri blitzes in with his chin up. I mean, if you hit hard and you have someone that is gonna do that, it's like you have a puncher's chance there. Jiri did look like he stopped kicking the leg a little bit, but then he'd throw one, so it's hard to say. When you're a samurai like that and you want to kill, but then you see your opponent wounded like that from something maybe you didn't necessarily cause, maybe that samurai warrior kill mindset turned off, and he just got, I don't know, it's hard to say, because he did blitz in.
Stress that I went through to see him lose like that was like, I hung out with Carlos Ulberg, nice dude, super chill, respectable guy. I like Jiri. I'm a big Jiri fan. And to see him go out like that I was like, dude, I understand this samurai code, and to hear his post-fight speech, he sounded so in disbelief of himself that he literally said, I won. But man, and I'm just listening, I'm like, bro, my heart is breaking for you.
I understand the spirit, the fight spirit in Jiri for what he wanted. And in part of that, I also understand him wanting to show the utmost level of respect by not wanting to take a victory over a wounded gazelle, but actually wanting to get a victory fighting a lion at its most dangerous state and coming out on the other side. Meaning, yes, he wanted to slug it out, mano a mano, the best way possible, and then come out on top like he does often, as opposed to just, oh, this guy's hurt, oh, I'm just gonna keep doing that, and then just win like that. And I think that's kind of what he meant by showing mercy a little bit. I don't think it was just like, oh, I'm not gonna kill you. I think it was like, I don't want to necessarily go for one thing that I see that is compromised already. I want to actually fight you mano a mano.
You see Jiri start to like, I've got this. I've got this in the bag. I've got it in my mind that I'm winning this fight. And that there's nothing you can do. I'm going to beat you. It just, he took the focus off of what he was doing, and it cost him the fight. And I just said, I don't like while he's doing this. Ulberg could catch him with something right away. And then within seconds, that's exactly what happened.
But now for Jiri, it was one crucial error. And he could come out and say these things about being merciful because his opponent was damaged his leg and he didn't want to, keep pursuing the finish in that fight. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I know Yuri's big on this Bushido code and things like that, but I don't know how all that stuff works. All I know is for myself, if my opponent, if I do something to him and he injures his leg or he just injures his leg himself, I'm not going to let off the gas. I'm going to keep pursuing the finish. I'm going to keep pursuing the win. Like, I'm not going to let an injury to my opponent stop me from doing what I have to do inside the octagon. So Jiri can say what he wants, but to each their own. And for Carlos Ulberg, good on him. Showing the guts, showing the heart to overcome the injury and get the stoppage, because I have doubts that if that fight gets past the first round, Carlos Ulberg gets to the stool, I have doubts that Eugene Behrman would have let him continue in that fight.
I thought the fight was going to get called if they went to the, between rounds, between the first and the second. If he sat on that stool, adrenaline kind of faded, he got back on that leg, swelling kicks in, the refs, the doctors, everybody's looking at this guy. Everybody knows he's injured. They could have called the fight, but he finds a way to finish Jiri with a minute left on the clock and become the undisputed world champion. Incredible story, man. Losing in the UFC debut, then putting a streak together the way he did and becoming the undisputed world champion. Storybook.
This is a lesson that I always say. Those guys, athletes out there who keep their hands down when they fight. Bobby Green, Jiri Prochazka, Wing C. When you have your hands down, if a guy goes what, and you can't block everything, and that's a shot that just caught Jiri Prochazka at the very edge on the chin and drops him. And now we have a new light heavyweight champion of the world with Carlos Ulberg. Guy was on a 10-fight win streak, a lot of knockouts, and I'm excited, right? I think it's kind of a fresh look at this as a champion. You have Carlos Ulberg taking on Khalil Roundtree. You have Carlos Ulberg taking on Jamal Hill. You can even have Carlos Ulberg taking on Magomed Ankalaev. So there's some fresh matchups there that I'm excited to see.
It was amazing. The odds were stacked against him in a lot of different ways. And then, every fighter's nightmare is you're in this spot to win a championship, and it's not necessarily the other guy who did something to you, but your body just fails randomly and you're down a leg. You kind of need both legs in order to perform no matter what the sport is. And he was able to battle back and land that patented counter left hook of his, and to do it in that spot and dealing with that amount of adversity was just insane. But I guess you could say he had a little bit of help from his opponent, Jiri Prochazka.
I was very hard on Carlos Ulberg in the build to this. I was wondering why he was the guy that was going to fight for the belt when he hadn't looked great and he hadn't fought the best guys. Not only did he fight for the belt, he won tonight in tremendous fashion. And when I told him I've been hard on him, I asked him if he had heard me be hard on him. He said, yes, I heard it. I wondered why. And I told him, I go, because you can always tell that there was a lot of potential inside of you.
I feel bad for Ulberg. I really do. I feel bad for Carlos because it was a Hollywood movie type script. And he's got to now think that this guy gave him a break, because he had mercy on him, and that somehow led to whatever happened, which who the hell knows what was going on. But with that being said, hats off to Ulberg. He did what he had to do. He could have stopped. He could have quit. He could have hobbled around. But he was going to fight to the very end, and he deserves what he got.
My heart breaks for Jiri Prochazka. My heart breaks for this guy because we know how intense he is. We know that he's had multiple chances. We know that he's a former champion, but we know that he cares so deeply. He's about to become a father for the first time. He takes this fight just days before his partner is due to give birth. And you could see the way in which this affects him. And you just think about, man, what was that Saturday night like for him? What was that Sunday like for him? What's this Monday like for him? Because I know when fighters lose, they take it hard. There's different levels. Some are able to brush it aside, some are able to come back, some are able to regroup, and some let it rot and fester. And I feel like, I'm not saying this is the end of Jiri, I'm not saying that he's never gonna rebound and this will define him, but I could feel this one sitting with him. And maybe it's a blessing that it's happening at the same time as this incredible thing that he's about to experience, which is fatherhood. But I can see this affecting him so very much. So my heart breaks for him.
Jiri Prochazka deserves all all of the, I mean, it's going to haunt him, man. It's going to haunt the guy. I hope not. Obviously, it's not what I'm rooting for, but oh my gosh, Dennis, like, you know, he had to give up the title because he injured himself, and then he came back and he had to fight Alex Pereira. Quite frankly, he got kind of rushed into those fights. I feel like they were a little bit quicker than maybe he would have wanted. It was the short notice one when they filled in for Conor McGregor. And then it was almost like, dude, don't ever feel sorry for people. This is the UFC octagon. He knows better. He knows better, and you saw that in his face, in his interview, that Raw interview with Joe Rogan.
I bet Izzy was going crazy. I haven't seen Izzy's reaction, but I bet Izzy's reaction was
massive.
Fire.
Something tells me he won't be going crazy.
What a moment for Carlos Ulberg and Eugene Behrman and City Kickboxing, and interesting to see some people wonder aloud why Israel Adesanya, who is ubiquitously beloved and regarded as a great teammate, hasn't maybe publicly congratulated Carlos Ulberg. I guess that's much ado about nothing, but Kenny, fighting through an injury like that to win a championship is something that's going to be remembered forever. And at least in terms of the championship call, it does itself, you know. And new undisputed UFC Light Heavyweight Champion Carlos Ulberg gets it done on one leg, right? It's like that simple. Like he got it done on one leg.
Sense, because it's like, how does that fight play out if Carlos' knee doesn't get dude, it would have been, God, that would have been a sick fight. It still was with the injury and then the knockout. It was still a sick moment, but that fight needs to happen and play out fully.
But it's very relevant that you understand this. Like, if Yuri's to come out the back end, I mean, this fight had a little bit of everything. It had some controversy. It had a little bit of drama. It had an unusual ending. Hey, that's kind of unusual, you know, and that's all you need for a rematch. You just need that, just a little bit of something of, why are we here? Why are we doing this again? That's all that you need.